Hi guys and welcome back to the Average Pundits podcast, your home of all things Premier League. And finally, the new season's back underway, so we've got an awful lot to talk about. Actually some really interesting games as well. Not just a kind of fodder filler space games. There's actually been some really interesting results. So as always, I am joined by Reese. How you doing, Reese?
I'm doing good, and I'm doing better now that we are officially kind of on our road to 100 subscribers. We are about 24 away at the time of recording this. So if you are, wherever you're listening to this, please would you mind subscribing? We're trying to hit 100 subscribers by the end of 2020. So every subscribe, it matters. It really does. So, going back to the games, we had a load of really interesting games. Still more to be played coming up. We haven't seen two of the big teams play in Manchester City and Manchester United yet, so that's to look forward to. So, we had a splendid first weekend.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting things to talk about, and we will go straight into it and kick off with the, I guess the most important one, the biggest one to talk about on face, probably Liverpool Leeds, Reece.
So this is going to be like a sort of a rant warning for anyone that's watching. I am not a fan of Liverpool after that game. Leeds were fantastic. I think firstly before this, I think Leeds were fantastic. Ayling was brilliant. Jack Harrison was fantastic. In the middle of the park, Kelvin Phillips was phenomenal. Liverpool, on the other hand, apart from a couple players, were dreadful. Liverpool were a shambles, and we were dominated on the ball by a promoted club. When was the last time you saw Liverpool get dominated like that by someone that's not as established like Man City or Man United or Arsenal?
Yeah, right? It wasn't even like that was the case in the Watford game, really. The Watford game, obviously, they walked over you, but it wasn't really that prominent. But yeah, from all accounts, that the Leeds game was pretty. They definitely showed you a way around it.
There's a lot of things that I took away from the game. Virgil van Dijk had a stink. How are we going to let Patrick Bamford score? That is stupid.
Up the Bamford.
How are we going to let a bang average championship striker score against you? It's an absolute shambles. Trent Alexander-Arnold, the sooner he moves into the midfield, the better, because he's not a defensive right. I said this on the live stream that I did on Instagram Live. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is a better right back. I will say this. He's not a better player. He's a better right back. Trent Alexander-Arnold, if they were playing the same positions at right back, Wan-Bissaka is a better defensive player. In the midfield, Wan-Bissaka wouldn't stand a chance because he's one-footed. He doesn't have the vision of Trent, and Trent does have the natural ability of a central midfielder. He is not a right back. Our saving grace of the game, hat-trick Mo. I love Mo Salah in this game. Brought all the energy, brought all he had. The rest of both strikers, both the other strikers, I'm sorry. Roberto Firmino can get out right now. He has carried on his form from last season. He is, again, I'm going to use this word, a shambles. What striker fumbles in front of his own goal? This is Joelinton levels of bad. I think even Joelinton scored more recently than Firmino. So, what is it? Mane was pretty slow. They need probably a couple games to get back into it. But Firmino at Anfield is horrendous at scoring. Mane, yet again, very slow. Mo Salah was the only person in that attack that had any.
A good thing to point out is that you did actually win the game.
I know.
4-3.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not used to conceding 3 goals against Leeds United.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
We won the game, but there's so much more that you can take from this game. The only good players that were on the pitch, 3 of the goals were scored by Mo Salah, and the only other good player on the pitch was Andy Robertson. Andy Robertson ran the entire way of that pitch through the entire game.
Yeah,
there was no one else that could outplay him. He played phenomenally. Him and Mo, and I think Naby Keita had a good first half, but as soon as Naby Keita went off, it was curtains, to be honest.
Well, I mean, on the flip side, I mean, you have got from a neutral standpoint, you've got a really impressive performance from a newly promoted club like Leeds. which is always interesting to see in the Premier League and against the champions as well. So, I mean, if they're putting 3 past the champions, who knows what they could do, this season against some of the lesser clubs in the league. So I think they will definitely be a club to keep our eyes on this season. And, we did a special episode on when they got promoted a few episodes back. So if you haven't seen that already, go and check that out, because we do talk a lot about Leeds and the mentality of Bielsa and a lot of the players at the club.
Yeah.
So
Leeds played very well. I'll just say that now. Liverpool didn't help themselves with the high line. They held a very high line in this game, and they got countered. Jack Harrison is unbelievably quick. Some of the passes that were played by their captain Ayling as well, phenomenal. Yeah. So yeah, Leeds are going to be one. I think we both predicted them pretty like mid-table, mid to lower mid-table.
I predicted them just to survive the drop, to be fair.
Oh, okay. So I think I was pretty right with saying like 14th or so, because they showed that they're in the Premier League to fight, and they went to battle with Liverpool right now.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't maybe get our hopes up. I mean, Norwich had a very good start to the season last season, and so we'll have to see. We'll definitely have to see how it goes. But moving swiftly onwards, Reece, what was the next game we're going to talk about?
We're going to go over to mentioning teams that barely survived the drop. We got Brighton, who lost 3-1 to Chelsea.
I tell you what, in that game though, credit to Brighton. I think they had a really, really good performance, and Chelsea were just, they just took their chance as well. But I think Brighton really gave them a good showing in that game.
Definitely. Brighton had very good chances, most notably Trossard scoring that goal from outside the box. And I mean, it was good play. It was a good goal. But again, we have to look towards Kepa, don't we?
It was
they're going to bring in that Mendy, hopefully, from, I think it's Rennes.
Yeah.
And I think Kepa just needs to go. A lot of people do associate him with the £70 million fee, but that was Chelsea in desperation because they just lost Courtois. They had to pay top dollar for a keeper that's nowhere near worth 70 million, but it was his release clause.
I just think Sarri at the time, it was a Sarri signing. It just didn't. It just kind of came out of nowhere. It didn't really seem logical. They paid all that money for him, and everyone's just a bit like, oh wow, okay, we must be getting an absolute blinder of a keeper in the league, and we've yet to see that. And I mean, I have no doubt that maybe back in Spain, you could maybe do the job again, but clearly the Premier League, it's just not cut for him. So yeah, like you said, I think he definitely does need moving swiftly on. But at the end of the game, Frank did confirm he is still happy with Kepa. He's happy with him between the sticks. So we'll have to see where it goes. But I mean,
thing is, like with as a manager, you've got to publicly back your players. You've got to always be like, oh yeah, they're going to play well. He's always happy. But you can't be happy with that goalkeeper. Sure, he's conceded the most goals outside the box within the last 12 months, I think. I think he's just ahead of Matt Ryan. And I think that if Kepa's going to keep this up, I wouldn't be happy as Chelsea manager with Kepa. I just think they need to move on as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see what goes on for it. But I mean, talking about Chelsea, they did manage to put 3 past them. Jorginho with a swift, traditional Jorginho penalty. I think he's at 8 for Chelsea now, 8 put past, which is very impressive from him. Reece James arguably scoring, a goal of the season contender in the first week of the season. It was an absolutely incredible goal.
Unbelievable.
He is another right back as well. Just an absolutely incredible player who I would love to see play further up the pitch. I would love to see him as a DM.
Yeah,
because I think he's physical. He can pass the ball well. He's obviously got a shot on him as well. And then we saw Kurt Zouma as well tucking in the last goal with I think it was a bit of quite a hefty deflection, but however you get him. So a comfortable win for Frank and Chelsea, but Brighton really did put up a pretty impressive performance, and it was the ex Chelsea player was it Lamptey as well.
Lamptey, yeah.
He had a great game. He had a very. I mean, I think if he's going to put up those kind of performances, I don't think he'll be down that end of the table for too long. I thought he played absolutely incredibly. Same with Trossard. So, a very interesting game. But again, moving swiftly onwards, who have we got next?
We are going to move to the other important team in London, putting 3 past the team, and that's Arsenal. They are sort of continuing their momentum from the Community Shield and the FA Cup, sticking 3 past Fulham. newly promoted side, already showing their relegation fall, in my opinion. Very poor defending. Their defence was so shaky. Here's one question I want to put out there for this Arsenal game. 3 assists and 1 very good free kick, right? It might be a bit too early to tell, but were we wrong about the Willian signing?
I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. He had a great game.
Yeah.
But to me, there's still a lot of questions there. I think they got him on a free, didn't they? They got him on a free from a big rival. He's Premier League experienced. He's obviously a good player. But the reason that I was so hesitant on this. I mean, if you haven't seen it, we did a collaboration episode with Total Sport over on their channel. Go and check it out. They do amazing stuff over there. And we were just, doing a few more Premier League based predictions. And we both ended up saying that William was our least preferred signing of the summer. And there's still questions there, I think, but I'm not going to say anything about that performance. He was fantastic. And the thing is that we know that he can do that as well, because we've seen it, in the Prem before. We've seen him do it before. So if Arsenal are getting that kind of Willian for the next, 3 years, then, I might hold my hands up. But obviously goals coming from Lacazette, new boy Gabriel, and obviously Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who we can officially say, as of today, as of recording this podcast, will be out tomorrow. Obviously, he's now common knowledge. He has signed that new deal at Arsenal, which I'm sure is, music to a lot of Arsenal fans' ears at the moment. Yeah, so, massive congratulations to Arsenal for sorting that one out. He's a great player.
It looks like Arsenal are very hungry for their top 4, but they are going to have to sort out their defence, because if you do watch the game, they almost give away a goal in the early stages. Their defence kind of cracks a little bit. As a lot of the commentators were saying, he hasn't played a game in a good 6 months, Gabriel. So he's going to be a bit shaky. And yeah, if it was any other team, if it was a Man City, if it was a Man United, they would have been punished there. But I think they were let off because they benefited from having bad opposition. So Arsenal are going to be hungry for top 4. They have had a really good start, and I'm really scared for what they can achieve this season for sure. That they're going to be gunning for some silverware.
Yeah, I think as always they've got it in them. They always have it in them. It's just there's always a little piece of the puzzle missing for Arsenal, but you never know. This season could be a turnaround season. So again, we will have to see where that is going. What we got next?
So we are going to move on to two of the. Again, we're going to go back to London. We're going to go for Spurs versus Everton. Battle of two of the best managers, potentially, arguably, in the world, in Mourinho and Ancelotti.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
It's still, I'm pretty sure, like we mention this every time, it's still weird to see Carlo Ancelotti in the blue half of Merseyside. If any part of Merseyside he was going to be in, it would be in the red half, you'd assume. But Jurgen Klopp maybe trumps him right now. But
well, status-wise, is undeniable, and he's had some amazing, clubs in his career. But taking over the helm at Everton, securing a 1-0 win, which is, very impressive. But I will say now against a very, very poor Tottenham side. In that game, they just didn't look hungry at all. Especially after that goal win, and it was Dominic Calvert-Lewin with a very well-taken goal. Richarlison missing early on in the game as well. I don't know if Richarlison missed. Oh, my God.
That was potentially one of the worst misses I've seen in recent times. It was so, especially from a guy that's touted to be so good with either foot.
He has literally got all the bags of talent there, and he does all the work. Just gets to the end and he just fumbles the bag so badly. But at the end of the day,
it's a Jolinton finish.
But at the end of the day, we still got a 1-0 win out of Everton, and we got debuts from a lot of the new signs they've got. We had Decore, we had Allen and James Rodriguez all occupying that midfield. So very clear to say where Ancelotti wanted to improve on. He's completely revamped that midfield, and we could do a lot worse than Decore, Allen, and James Rodriguez. They all look live. I think James Rodriguez had a really good game.
Yes, James Rodriguez had a lot of good passes in that game. Passing was so on point. He did have a couple of chances that he didn't quite, but they were all outside the box, so there's less chance of them going in.
towards the end of it, he was just doing tricks. You know, I saw him just like lift the ball over something. I can't remember who it was now. It might have been Alderweireld towards the end. But he was just doing absolute madnesses on the pitch. But yeah, I think Everton are very, you know, Everton fans, like I said before, you know, I think they deserve to be excited. I think there's definitely stuff in the works there. Maybe not the finished article, maybe a couple of other things that need tweaking. But, you know, for a first real run at it with Ancelotti, with the, you know, he's got a transfer window with extensive time to sign people. I think he's done well.
Yeah, and the big question I posed to you in the topic of Jose Mourinho is, do you think that he is going to have a pretty poor season, or do you think he's going to try and have to pick it up? Because I think all of us have a bit of a soft spot for him after the All or Nothing documentary. So do you think he's going to pick things up?
It's really good watching that All or Nothing as well. I definitely recommend people to go and see that. But I don't think he's going to pick it up at all. I think he was the wrong appointment at the start. I mean, especially when, you know, there are rumours of Ancelotti being available at the time. And then, you know, I think I would have rather have seen. I've said it from the very start. I would have seen Allegri go to Tottenham if I had the chance. I would have definitely have, you know, thrown some money his way, see what he was saying. But, you know, the wages that Mourinho's on, I think he's now like the second highest paid manager in world football at Tottenham, and I really don't know. I just don't see it working for him. You know, that like I said, in that game, they didn't look ready at all. They did not look ready for this season at all. You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see him gone by Christmas. I really wouldn't. I know that's a bold statement.
That is a very bold statement.
But at the same time, the amount of money it would cost to get him out of the club, is it worth it? Do they risk it? Do they keep it going? But it's content from the Spurs fans, who have had an awful lot of ups and downs in the last few years. They may start to get a bit more restless, but it's something we'll have to see, isn't it? You know, with the results coming in and week out, it could be really bad days at Spurs.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. With Jose in charge and certain aspects of, you know, his performances recently, it kind of makes Spurs fans think, what if we kept Maurizio on? Pretty much. So moving on, anyways, to the next game, we're going to go down to the Boilermen, the Peaky Blinders. We're going to go to West Brom, getting demolished by Leicester 3-0.
Yeah, really impressive from Leicester, I think.
Yeah, and do you think, because I pinned them 7th, you pinned them 4th, do you think these 3-0 games against these sorts of sides, are these realistic expectations for Leicester?
I think so, man. I think they've still got it, and the questions get asked of Vardy. It's like, oh, it's an aging Vardy, but you know he's still doing it. He's still doing it. Man. I know his goals came from penalties, but
that's the exact point I was going to make.
Goals came from penalties, but you know he'll still end up as probably Leicester's top scorer again. And you know there's injury knocks that that can go in later in your career, but I think he's solid still. I really do. He's still a very, very solid player, and what a debut for Castagna as well.
Castagna, he played very good. He played very well, getting a goal on his debut, and I think he was pretty much all over the park for Leicester, opening the floodgates for the other penalty that was happening as well. Another person that we have to mention is Harvey Barnes. He had a fantastic game.
Yeah, he did. He really did.
He had an unbelievable game. He could have scored maybe 3 or 4. He had so many chances to attempt, to get in Leicester to 7-0 at that point. But I just don't think he's shooting boots to the quite there. He's a very young player still, and I think people forget that watching him play. He plays with a lot of maturity. So do you see a lot of high things, high hopes for him this season?
I think so, man. I think as long as he gets the game time and he's able to get in these positions where he's able to, make a difference in the game, even if he's getting brought on late into the game, I can see him making a lot of impact. And obviously, a young talent, as well, coming up through the Leicester team. It wouldn't be surprised, if you start seeing rumours of other clubs sniffing around for him. But hopefully, for Leicester's sake, they can hang on to him because, a really, really interesting little player he's looking out to be. So quick, so skillful on the ball. He's someone I definitely would like to have at United. He's definitely an interesting player. So I think he's going to have a good season.
Definitely. And the other question I have, it revolves around West Brom. Newly promoted club. They brought in Diag, the guy from West Ham.
Yeah.
I'm very bad at pronouncing names, so I'm not going to try. And they also brought in, they officially signed Mateus Pereira.
Yeah.
Who came in, who was on loan in the Championship last year. They brought in some okay players, but they've got Slaven Bilic. They've got up to a really bad start. Do you see Slaven Bilic being the first manager to be sacked?
I think he'd be very easy pickings to say like, oh yeah, he could definitely be gone first. But when I think that's another thing. So when it's relegation candidate teams, obviously you got to do what you got to do to stay in the league, haven't you? But at the same time, they're up against it. They've just been promoted from a lesser league, a tough league, a good league, but a lesser league, coming up to playing the best teams in the country. I think it's very, very difficult right now to say. I've definitely predicted West Brom to go down. So, and I've also predicted Villa and I've also predicted Fulham to go down. So we could see all of those managers gone. You never know. We could see absolutely all of them being given their marching orders. But at the same time, it's all about the expectations, really, of what those clubs have of the managers. I think they want to retain in the league. I think that's the most important thing for them. But they're up against it. I don't see West Brom or Fulham doing it. I really don't.
Absolutely. Kind of. It's disappointing to see them come up and do so badly, but again, they've got to stop with giving away so many penalties. Really, they've got to stop with the. I can't remember what the name of the centre back is, but he was way too reckless. West Brom's pressing in this game as well was all over the place as well.
Yeah. Well, they're a very physical team, West Brom, and also they've just come up from the Championship, which is, I would genuinely argue, the most physical league, aggressive league, definitely in the country. It's way more, you have to really get stuck in more than you would normally do in the Prem. The Prem's a lot more technical, it's a lot more agile, and it's a lot higher caliber players. But the Championship is scrappy, and a lot of these clubs coming up from there still play that Championship scrappy football. But you've got to take it to the next tier. And, they've signed players to help them on that journey, but I personally don't think we'll see West Brom in the Prem next season.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned, they play stuck in football and then you get to the Premier League, you're probably going to give away a lot of fouls because teams that have been up here for a while, I mean, we saw with the Chelsea, the Chelsea penalty. Timo Werner, once he collided knees with the goalkeeper, he flung himself towards the touchline. It was you do get all these top players that are willing to go down to win anything, whereas in the Championship you don't necessarily get that. So Leicester had a great start. West Brom not so much. So we'll see where both teams end up at the end of the at the end of the Premier League. Moving on, another team. We'll come back to London for the official London Stadium where West Ham lost 2-0. To Newcastle United. Certain in-laws are going to be very happy with that. Callum Wilson, what a showing for him. He played all over the park, and I think it's going to take a lot of time before Newcastle actually keep up with him because there were instances where Callum Wilson would be cutting in from the right and there would be no one in the box. I think it's going to take time because if that happens, they've got loads of chances to create, and that's what they lacked from last season.
Yeah. I think we were only saying the other day that we were really impressed with the way Newcastle were handling their business and stuff. And I think they made some really well-rounded signings. Again, they're definitely a club which there's more to do there if they have, upper aspirations. But I think they'll have an impressive season. I think we'll get some good results out of Newcastle. I think they're definitely Premier League stayers for the meantime.
Yeah, Alan Saint-Maximin was always flashy. He had a brilliant start to the season. I remember watching the highlights of the game, and I saw him pull out some sort of skill move, and I just went, "Whoa! Let me just take a minute." Jamal Lewis had a fantastic game, an overlapping left back, putting in some crosses into the box, almost getting Callum Wilson his first goal in the first half. What a start for the young left back! I mean, do you think he's going to have a massive impact for Newcastle this season?
I think so. I mean, I said it at the start, at the start of the season, before the football kicked off. I was saying it over the summer as well. I think, Max Aaron's got a lot of the headlines for Norwich as for the fullbacks. I think obviously Max Aaron's a really good player who still hasn't gone anywhere yet, which is quite interesting. We're still looking potentially at Max Aaron's transfer, which, hopefully someone picks him up because he definitely is worthy to play in the Prem. But on the other end, you had obviously Jamal Lewis doing, I think, an equally good job for Norwich, but maybe wasn't getting as much credit. So I think, Newcastle made a really well-rounded signing. I can't believe Liverpool didn't get him. I know talks broke down. Maybe it was the lack of first-team football, and if it was, fair play to him, because obviously you've got Robertson, who's arguably, world's number one at the moment, him and probably Alphonso Davies of Bayern. So potentially it was, I didn't want to sit on the bench, which is fair enough. And he's not going to do that in Newcastle. He's going to be playing week in and week out. So I think we're going to see a lot of performances from him of that caliber this season. I really do like him.
Yeah, Newcastle are going to be pretty deadly. And the other new signer, Hendrick, coming in as well, scoring on his debut. 2 debut goals for Newcastle. That was really impressive to see. I think it's very impressive for all Newcastle fans to finally see some goals that aren't scored by defenders. Last season, I'm pretty sure John Joe Shelby was their top goal scorer with 6 goals.
That's crazy.
So, but here's the big question. West Ham, really bad start. Antonio was probably the only bright spark for them in that game.
Yeah.
It's something that's been playing on my mind for some time when Chelsea were linked with this guy. Now an England international, Declan Rice. Okay. I'll weigh in on this, but I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think Declan Rice is worth £80 million?
No. That's done and dusted. No, I don't think he's worth that money at all. I think that's absolutely silly season. But he's a West Ham boy for now. He started off at Chelsea. He's a West Ham boy now. He's a West Ham player. I think he's got a lot of passion at West Ham. They showed a lot of faith in him, so I think he does really like the club. I know West Ham are extremely proud of him as well as a player, and seeing him come up and come through and becoming the kind of guy he is now. And he's a decent footballer. He's definitely decent. Good enough to get some England caps as well. Clearly, and I think he's got the mould to only get better. He has got the mould there. Whether that's as a DM or push him back to a centre back, because obviously there were a lot of links with Chelsea linking him to go and play as a centre back, but the money that's being touted around for him, it's literally just to price Chelsea out of a potential transfer, which I don't think will happen now. I think it'll probably happen at some point, maybe as early as January, but I don't think it's going to happen before the transfer window closes. I think that fee, with the second you hear that money being thrown around, it's like, okay, we need to retract this a little bit. But all in all, I don't mind Rice as a player. There's players I prefer in that position, but he's not too bad.
He went missing in this game. I didn't see him at all in this game. I don't think he offered anything to West Ham. And if it's £80 million that they're asking for it, I think they're hoping that they lose someone like N'Golo Kante in order for them to spend that money, which is exactly what they did when they lost Courtois. They had to get in someone quickly, pay the release clause of someone that's not worth £70 million. I mean, Declan Rice, realistically, how much is Declan Rice worth? I'm going to say maybe like 35 to 40 million. If that, at most, that's a desperation price.
I'd say 40, but I'd say if you want to do it this way as well, maybe 10 million extra because he's an English player, from an English club to an English club. Because a lot of the time, especially when they're like homegrown talents as well, it can be harder to prize, players out. And also because it's a London club and it's a London rival. Potentially you're looking at another 10. Potentially it goes up to 60. But personally, if I could pay anything for him, I think in an open market I'd pay no more than 40.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one, and we'd love to hear your guys' suggestions about Declan Rice as well. Whether you would pay £80 million if you were a team like Chelsea needing another central defensive midfielder. At the moment, I don't think they do. I think their midfield is pretty good. I mean, Jorginho scored the penalty. They got Kante still. I think they're okay as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any team right now needing Declan Rice. I can't see it anyways. But moving on to a team that did extremely well last season, but could be tipped for potential disappointment this season, and that is Sheffield United losing 2-0 to Wolves, who are hungry for European football. Trying to get into the top 6 this season, winning 2-0. Raul Jimenez getting off to a really, really good start. On the topic of Raul Jimenez, do you think someone's going to come either in before the end of this transfer window or in January? Do you think that Raul Jimenez is going to be someone on people's target list?
It could happen, but at the same day, it's the argument. It's a 29-year-old striker, obviously in the prime of his footballing career. He's playing great football for Wolves, and he's a very, very prolific striker, and prolific in the Premier League as well. That's a good sign. If you can do it in the Prem, there's a lot of lesser leagues, around that you could do it in as well. So I wouldn't rule it out. I could see it happening, but it would depend on him. I think in the Premier League, I think it would maybe be a bit silly. I think if it did happen, it would have to come outside the Prem. Silly for the sense of Wolves, that being, selling a player of his caliber to a direct rival doesn't really scream good business to me. So I think if he was going to go elsewhere, I think you'd be looking more towards, a couple of the other top European leagues. It could happen, but I think right now Wolves will be saying no. I think, we want to keep you for another year. So if it does, possibly next summer. But like you said, he's a very, very prolific player, someone I really do like at Wolves. I think he's probably my favourite player at Wolves, I think.
Oh, I don't know if I can say that for me. I mean, you know how big of a fan I am of Adama Traore. I'm not sure if he featured in the game against Sheffield United, but Jimenez. Do you know, right? I'm just going to throw this out there. He screams Napoli for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why. Maybe taking over the reins of Dries Mertens.
I think it's like the Italian league. It's a very, there's a lot of strikers in the Italian league which are taller, a bit more physical, that can get a bit more stuck in and do quite well there. I mean, you've seen other players, exactly, Lukaku, Dzeko, you've seen players like Milic, leading the lines and, very, very, physical players who can definitely do a job. So, I don't disagree with you there, but definitely the Serie A seems like somewhere he could venture off to, but there's, like we were saying, though, for Wolves' win, it's Sheffield's loss, isn't it? And
yeah,
I said in the Total Sport collaboration we did over on their channel that they were going to be my team, which I think were going to be, a disappointing team this season. I don't think they're going to live up to the same heights as last season. And that's not really a direct criticism. It would be very hard for them to replicate that form off the bat. If they did, incredible. But I think they'll struggle a little bit more. They'll start to see that, maybe their team aren't, they're a little bit more human than they were last season, a little bit less superpowery.
Yeah, I think that, as we say, second season syndrome for Sheffield United. There's a lot of S's in that sentence, and I think with Sheffield United, they are going to be found out a lot of the times. It's the same thing kind of when Leicester won the title. No one could figure out how to beat them. They played very persuasive counter-attacking football. With Sheffield United, no one knew how not to lose points against them. I mean, Liverpool was so close in a couple games. A lot of people dropped points. A lot of teams dropped points to Sheffield United. I think this season is that second season where people, like teams, like managers, are figuring out how to beat Sheffield United, and it's showing for sure. Sheffield United didn't have as many good chances as they usually do. Their backline was as shaky. It was just Wolves were very good from set pieces as well. Romain Says to try and get the second goal as well. Very happy because he's in my dream team. But yeah, I think do you see a relegation battle for Sheffield United?
I wouldn't say a relegation battle. I think they'll survive. I think there are weaker clubs. But I think they'll be, lower in the table. You can see our official table predictions, obviously, in the episode just gone. Please go and check that out. But I think they'll struggle a lot more. And I don't think we will see the same Sheffield from last season. I think losing Dean Henderson was big. Replaced him well, with Ramsdale. But I think that, it's very hard to replace a goalkeeper when you have that kind of season. And we'll just start to see a lot more football being played around Sheffield as well. So it's going to be tough.
Definitely. And moving on to our final game of the opening weekend, game week 1 in the Premier League, the latest season that we are going to be taking a look at, going to Selhurst Park and looking at Crystal Palace versus Southampton. Crystal Palace only putting one past Southampton. A bit surprising, really, seeing as how Southampton left us last season. Not being able to score is quite a surprise, especially from a guy like Danny Ings. Before we mention this, what a game for the Palace goalkeeper Guaita.
Yeah.
What an unbelievable show.
He's a great keeper. He's a very good goalkeeper. But he was just kind of running saves all over the park, really. But I mean, it's a credit to the team. Palace have these little pockets of players of real talent. They signed obviously Eze over the transfer period, and then we were first started talking about that transfer well before it happened with Ed Aarons. Obviously he's a massive Crystal Palace fan, so he was kind of in the know a bit more about that. And that was at the stage where there were talks that were constantly going in and out of that transfer. And now he's looking like a real talent as well. And, obviously leading the line with Zaha, the goal scorer, there's questions there whether, staying going. I personally think his time to go was 2 seasons ago. I think he's here now. I think if he wants to get another move, fair play. And I think he probably will find one. But at the same time, he could just extend his career playing top quality Premier League football. You know, maybe not winning as much, obviously, with a club like Palace, but he'd be playing the best of the best. But you know, they'd have a job to hold on to him. I think if the second a big club comes in, I don't think he can really be too fussy anymore.
Yeah, no, I think I do think that Zaha is going to want to be out the door. I think he's coming up to 28. He's hitting the prime of his career. If he's going to have the move, it's going to be now. It's now or never, pretty much. And I think that's got to be his mindset. He's going to want to move, and I think that instead of, I think I said this about Aubameyang before he signed his contract. This season is going to be Zaha's audition year for other teams to come and pick around for him. Whether that be about 40 million, I think he's worth about 30 to 40 million for a caliber of that, for that caliber player. I think that's reasonable. What do you think of the odds that he is going to actually leave for someone for greater pastures?
It's tough. It's really tough. You would have asked me 2 seasons ago, I said he's gone because, or even last season, 2 seasons ago more predominantly. But I was thinking, someone's got to come in for him now. Because, he's already expressed he wants the move. He already expressed, he wants the next step in his career. And yet, the Arsenal links were there. I think there were quite strong Dortmund links at one point as well. But those are the only 2 clubs which really rang out to me. Apart from that, I mean, a lot of clubs were kind of just, they were happy with what they had. So I feel from him in the sense that, he may have missed his chance a little bit. But I still think potentially there is a move there. I think it would be smart for him to go and possibly try somewhere else. It'll be a very big, thing to lose for the Palace fans. I know how well respected he is, definitely at that club, and he's given us some great moments in the Premier League as well. It's a shame it never worked out at United for him, really, because a player of his caliber, what he turned out to be. But there was, even looking at it now, I only have ever seen it work at Palace. I wouldn't have seen it work at United in any way. But fair play to him, he's a very interesting player and someone who could definitely provide us more cracking moments this season. But on the flip side,
go on.
Well, on the flip side with Southampton, obviously we saw a slightly underwhelming performance, and obviously Danny Ings, great striker, carried them last season in a lot of games. Losing Højbjerg to Tottenham, I don't know how big an impact that was for Southampton. I'm not really too sure. I don't really rate the signing to Tottenham that much, but possibly it was a big loss for Southampton. Again, it's all to see, but I think Southampton will be fine again, but I don't think we'll see the same Southampton from last season.
No, I think they're going to be a mid-table side at most. I don't think they'll end up creeping into the top side of the table, even with a guy like Danny Ings, who is, if I'm honest, I'll take Danny Ings back at Liverpool if he's going to keep scoring. So, it wouldn't be I wouldn't be offended by that signing if I'm being completely honest. But going back to Wilfried Zaha just for a little second, you mentioned Manchester United. If Wilfried Zaha did not go to Manchester United, do you think he would have had his move by now? Like, say if he'd have stayed at Crystal Palace until he was the age of 25, do you think he'd be at a club already by now? And
well,
do you think
I think United went in for him, and I think we were lucky to get him when we did. I think we showed a lot of interest, and we got that signing wrapped up. But if it wasn't us, then it was going to be someone else. It was going to be Arsenal. It was going to be Liverpool. It was going to be Chelsea. It was going to be another club in the Premier League, in my opinion. And who knows then? Who knows what might have happened? At that time, it was a very, very different market in the Premier League. You were looking at just post-Ferguson Manchester United, so like Moyes, Manchester United, and difficult timings around then, and it was very difficult timings. And I don't have any regrets with that transfer. It's a shame to see, but there are so many of those stories with players at United that you just sign there and it just doesn't work out. It's no different to Depay, and Depay has obviously made room for himself. Since then, he's really found some form. So fair play to him. But I would have thought I do think Zaha would have definitely got that move, but it could have just worked out the exact same way. He could have ended up back at Palace doing the same job. I don't necessarily think it was a United thing. I think it was more of a just right player, wrong time thing.
Yeah, I think I do. If I was Wilfried Zaha, you talk about regret. The club probably didn't regret it, but I think the player might regret going there so early on. I think it was his decision to want to go there so early in his career, and I don't think there was a proper place for him there at that point in time. he wasn't ready to get into the first starting squad, and that's what he needed. He needs first team football, and he showed that with Crystal Palace. He's carrying this team, and that's why he's showing his quality. So I think he should have waited until he was about 25, 26 and got his big money move to a club. I mean, he could. I said before he was worth maybe 30, 40 million. He could have been worth double that if he'd stayed and then been at a big club in Europe or been at Manchester United after that, because they had some striker problems. They could have sorted that out already. So who knows what is in store for Wilfried Zaha. But going back to the Southampton, I think they played a good game. They dominated play, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely. You mentioned Højbjerg going to Spurs. I don't think that really benefited or it didn't really affect Southampton that much, if I'm being honest. He wasn't really one of those key players that is do or die for Southampton.
I mean, I think I disagree there. I think he was important for Southampton. I just don't think he was the player that Spurs needed. I think he was just a weird transfer. But I think for Southampton, I think he was quite valuable. I'm not sure. But potentially we could see a season where they stop pushing performances around with absolutely no regrets of selling him. But I guess it's all to see in the coming weeks. But for the first 8 games, I can't really complain. We've had definitely some exciting results, and like you said, we still got to see United take on Burnley and City Villa as well, isn't it? There's 2 games in hand that we need to see. So for those games, you have to head over to our social media to see any potential predictions, or we might have a few different things floating around on there. You can get a hold of us as always on Twitter at Pundits Average, on Instagram at The Average Pundits. And if you want to get in touch with us to come on the podcast, we are very open to potential guests. Email us at theaveragepundits@outlook.com. And then, as always, Reece, thank you ever so much for joining me this week to talk about the first games.
These games have been fantastic to watch this week. I feel like intrigue for the Premier League it's at its peak now at the beginning. The transfer window is still open. The games are just kicking off. It's always fun to see what teams are going to be, what teams are going to be great. So I think that it's going to be fantastic to continue the season, and it's going to be fantastic to continue the podcast this year.
Definitely. And we will have it all covered on the podcast as normal. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.